Welcome to a new episode of Delphine Circle, where we uncover the mind, body, and spirit of success. Subscribe now for free to receive updates on the latest interviews. Then, sit back, relax, and tune in. Donna, welcome to the Circle.
Thank you. I finally get to be here with you, Delphine, after all these years. So thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, we've been friends for a very long time.
We have.
We were just talking about the stories. You went to high school with my ex-husband, Clay.
I did. He's older, though. He's that about 2 years older.
Very clear about that.
Yeah, very clear.
Yes. But not only have we been friends for a long time, but you are seriously one of my favorite people. I mean, you are one of the most loving, generous, supportive, inspirational women I've ever met. You literally walk the talk. So I love every time I get a little emotional even just thinking about it.
Oh, that's
I love every
sweet.
minute that we get to spend together. So I'm so happy that you are here today.
Well, thank you. I feel the same way about you. We've had, some interesting times together, and the way our paths keep crossing, and
so true.
Our friendships overlap, and I meet people that and I go, oh, you know her?
Yeah.
And I know vice versa, especially with social media. Sometimes I go, wait, she knows her also, or she knows him. And I'm sure you probably think the same thing. But, I think that's the way God works in our lives. We touch and then we move apart. We touch, we move apart. And
that's what the circle is about.
Yeah, it is.
Absolutely.
It is. So thank you for allowing me to be part of your circle.
Well, and not only do I want to talk about your new book, Fearless Women, but I also asked if you would talk to me about the subject of faith.
Yes.
Because I know this is a subject that is very near and dear to you.
Sure
you have
is.
A deep personal relationship with it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been something that keeps coming to me lately.
Mm-hmm.
I've been doing a lot of studying on my own, both for personal development and spirituality. And it just keeps kind of hitting me on the head. So I thought, okay, let me take a deeper dive into what this means. Because, as we were talking about it, growing up, to me, the word faith was a very secular term. It was like, it kind of was almost synonymous with religion, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what is your faith? Mm-hmm. And I always maybe didn't give it enough thought because I wasn't raised as a religious person. As I started studying spirituality, it is the cornerstone of spirituality as well, because it's kind of similar lines, right? Maybe without the same structure, but very similar teachings.
Absolutely.
When I got my certification as a life coach, I realized that faith was really the root of what everything that they talk about in terms of personal development. It's about faith in yourself. It's about faith in everything. So I really wanted to talk to you about what your thoughts are about what does faith mean to you?
Well, I think, and we talked a little bit about this, I actually signed the book using this, and it's I've used this scripture a lot, and it reminds me of what it says in the book of Hebrews, is Hebrews 11:1, which is the book of faith, the book of Hebrews in the Christian New Testament, talks about and says specifically, faith is the assurance of things hoped for, the conviction of things not seen. So it's more than a hope. It's you just know, because you know, and by knowing and those thoughts that you have in your mind, I like what Naomi Judd used to say, and that is your body hears everything your mind thinks. So it's just so important to have faith. And for me as a Christian, my faith comes through God and through Jesus, but people need a faith. They need to know that, yes, you can count on yourself. You should be empowered. You should be educated to do what you feel called to do. But then who is your higher power? Who do you look to when things don't go the right way? We can only go so far by ourselves. We need a community of other people, and we also need a being. For me, it's God and Jesus, like I already said. But I told you that when I started practicing as a nutritionist, everybody that came to me, everybody without exception that wanted me, first of all, I never put people on diets. I was like, you want a weight loss program, fast one, there's nothing wrong with those, but that wasn't me. And even though it was pretty much where the money is, I was like, no, I go on, how long did it take you to gain weight or lose weight, whatever they were, gaining weight, losing weight. Oh, it took me 20 years. Well, then this is a slow process. But every person without exception, it had to do with emotional and spiritual issues. It wasn't about the food. was something inside. There was like a hunger, if you will, inside, and it came out in basically, and I've studied a little bit about eating disorders, as an eating disorder. So, and I'm using that in a broad term right now.
Yeah.
But
well, and I should mention, because not only are you the co-founder of Robert Schuller Ministries and Community Church of Orange County with your hubby, Reverend Robert Schuller, you're also the author of Healthy Family, Happy Life, a nutritional consultant for Mind, Body, and Soul. And of course, the most recently, the author of Fearless Women. So you bring a whole breadth of experience into what you do and your perspective and how you counsel people. And I love that about it, because you've always been a big proponent on nutritional health. I mean, I feel like way back before it was even really that popular to talk about it, you've always brought a very holistic approach to talking about nutrition and health. So I love that.
Thank you. You know, it was easy for me because I was brought up that way. My mom didn't allow us to have soft drinks. We were able to have soft drinks when we had pizza once, like every 3 weeks. I remember we had to drive from Laguna Beach to a pizza parlor in Garden Grove, and it was called Blinky's Pizza because they had like an organ. And yeah, isn't that wild? I talked to Robert, my husband, about that a lot because it was kind of up where he grew up in Santa Ana. I'm like, why did we do that? Well, first of all, Laguna Beach was totally different. The world was different. You didn't have pizza parlors on every corner, and it was good pizza. And we used to get soft drinks. It would be a pitcher of soft drinks. My brother and I,
root beer.
So stoked. I think it was root beer. And my mom she didn't have that kind of stuff in the refrigerator. My mom always knew to use real butter. And now we've come full circle, and people are saying, don't eat fake food, right? And I've been talking about that for a long time. Robert and I together had a health ministry like 30 years ago. We had seminars at Rancho Capistrano, and it's all about eating real food. Just eat real food.
And it's so funny that you bring this up, because I actually just read this very disturbing article, and they were talking about the 5 toxins that we need to stay away from. And, we know it's the MSG and the sucralose and aspartame. But now they've added diacetyl, I think is what they call it, and it's the fake butter.
Yes.
So that microwave popcorn, we can't do that anymore.
No.
It's causing, what do you call it? Not amnesia, dementia.
Dementia, exactly, dementia. And in fact, I'm so strict on that now. I actually ask restaurants, and very nicely, you can ask anything as long as you're polite, right? I ask, how do you cook your how do you cook your food? I can have coconut oil. I prefer butter, real butter. And a lot of the places, the finer restaurants will say, oh yeah, of course. But you'd be surprised, because I asked about a salad dressing recently in a very well-known, very expensive establishment here in a hotel in Newport Beach. And it was an vinaigrette. And I said, is this olive oil? And he said, oh, yes. And I said, could you just check and make sure there's no canola oil in it or something like that, a seed oil. And a lot of waiters don't know what seed oil is. Right. But he went to the chef, came back, and he said, as a matter of fact, it's only 75% olive oil, and it's cut 25% with canola. I was like, well,
is that a cost savings thing?
It's a cost savings. It's cost savings. And again, it's at someplace, this restaurant. It was shocking. And the people, and I do it quietly. I don't want to make anybody else at the table feel self-conscious of what they're ordering. It's just my personal preference. And so I always it's easy, olive oil and lemon on the side.
Easy.
Great dressing.
Yeah. Oh, and speaking of olive oil, I also just read recently that Moroccan olive oil has the highest nutrients. Is it polyphenol or something like that?
Polyphenols. Yeah, I didn't know that.
That Moroccan. I found it on Amazon, so you can get it. And instead of having to drink a liter of it, actually, this is Stephen Gundry's report.
Yes, I know who he is.
It's only a tablespoon that you have to get for your whole day to have all of everything that you need.
So you do that too. You take some olive. I love olive oil. Well, you've got that beautiful skin.
Thank
you. You look like you were born in the land of olive oil.
Well, I have olive skin, so that might have something to do with it. So back onto the subject of faith.
Yes.
I actually read recently that they said faith is the bridge between heaven and earth. And I thought, what a simple way to put it. It was such a beautiful way to put it, right? It's like from where you are to where you want to go or where you want to be.
Yes.
I actually found a really cool quote from Tony Robbins, because as we know, personal development has gotten really attached to faith. And I love it because when people are trying to find a way to make themselves the best that they can, there has to be a direction, right? There has to be a compass for that.
Yes.
And so Tony says, Faith is not learned. It's something we're born with. Faith is what fuels us through times of fear and uncertainty. It is more powerful than any emotion, even fear. When all hell is breaking loose, it gives us the ability to find our center, to help ourselves and others to find answers, to find a higher meaning in the midst of our pain and in spite of our fear. And if you're a leader, you take that certainty and transfer it to others, because human conviction has a viral effect and will spread.
Right.
You bring unwavering certainty to chaotic environments through the power of your faith. Because you can't really be an effective leader without being able to...
No, it's that assurance again. You have to have that assurance. You can't waver. You can't act uncertain. You can't act afraid. And to me, the opposite of faith is fear. You know, and that troubles me a lot, how fearful people appear to be, especially in the last few years. Afraid to travel, afraid to eat at a restaurant. I mean, these are extreme cases, but you know, germs, like germophobia, and afraid of what might happen if
afraid of their neighbor,
afraid of people, afraid of their neighbor. And it's just, and a lot of people of faith, supposedly of faith, are guilty of this. And I don't understand it. And, you know, somebody that I know, you do a lot of traveling. I've traveled all over the world. I've been in some of the most remote jungles in some pretty otherwise frightening situations. Like, how did you put yourself here and how are you going to get out of this? And at the end of the day, it's made me a much more understanding and, I believe, diverse in my beliefs person, because you do make it through. Somehow, I mean, I don't put myself in harm's way purposely, but again, I'm not going to be like so safety oriented that I'm not going to do, I guess, what people would consider risky things. And part of traveling, especially if you travel into third world countries, you know, all through Africa, all through Mongolia, Philippines, those are some of the places I've been. You're going to put yourself, you're going to be in situations that are not comfortable, but that's where you grow, and that's where your faith grows, right? So you can't live in fear. And
one time we were walking down the street and we passed a homeless person, and you stopped and you said, "Hi, tell me your story. Tell me."
When I was with you?
Yeah.
Oh,
it was in Laguna Beach.
do that.
And I remember thinking at the time, like, he looked a little sketchy. I'm not gonna lie. I felt a little bit fearful for you. I was like, oh, should she be approaching that guy? I don't know. It seemed a little bit, he lit up. He lit up. And I saw that, again, you bring this light wherever you go.
Thank you. What a
and it has to be the fearlessness that you're talking about that came out that day, for sure.
I think, you know, thank you for that. That makes me feel so good. Yeah, I do have a habit of talking to people that are on the street. If I, you know, I use my sense about me to kind of ascertain if it looks dangerous or not. But most of the times it's not. And all those people want is not to be ignored. And they want to know that you notice them, that they're humans. It's a fellow human being. I mean, it doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter how famous, how wealthy you are, or how poor and how downtrodden you are. God made all of us the same. Really, we're all God's children. And some of us get the break, some of us don't. And thank you for remembering that. I don't. Like I said, I kind of have a habit.
Just an average day for you.
I talk to anybody. My husband always says, "Oh, Donna, I love you. You just stop and talk to anybody." And I go, "Well, that makes me happy."
Yes. Well, you guys are both really good at talking. So my recent book is The Biology of Belief.
Oh, that sounds very
Dr. Bruce Lipton's book. And it's a very scientific book, I'm going to say. Some parts are hard, but I really want to understand. I really want to understand the science of it. So this book is about epigenetics, and it's about how they're understanding now that thought in our environment actually affects cell regeneration and our genetics. And it's so powerful to read this that we're now seeing the science behind faith.
Isn't it
we're
great?
Now seeing that there's scientific proof and evidence for how our thoughts and our beliefs interact with our physical being, which I thought was so incredible and so powerful, right?
It's so great. It's, science sometimes does have to catch up with reality. Everything has been around forever, but we're just now finding things out, and we'll continue to be that way. That's our evolution of man and women. Things are there, but we have to be open-minded and be able to research and look into these things. So I love hearing about that. Yeah. I love study. This is not a scientific book. This is very practical, but I don't write that way, but I like to read those books as well. And I get a lot of my thoughts that way, especially when I speak.
Yeah.
So.
Well, as you have been out in the world ministering, do you often come into conversations with people who are more scientific based? Have people brought this subject up to you guys?
We've had some interesting conversations, and yes, we do. We have a lot of people. In fact, Robert interviewed someone many, many years ago. When we were with the big church on Our Power, which was the televised program, the televised version of the church. He interviewed Nobel Prize winner in genomics, that's what it was. And he was a believer, a very strong Christian believer. So it's interesting to talk about how, faith and science do work together, but you have to be really open-minded. You have to be able to say, hey, my views are here, this person's views are here, and come together and find commonality. And then in that commonality, you grow. Yeah. You start growing.
Yeah. I heard recently, for every opinion you have, there's an equal and opposite opinion on the other side. And I think as long as we see the world as black and white, that's the division that is creating so many issues, right? Everything's a shade of gray, even though it may not be the exact same opinion you have about something.
Exactly.
Where you don't know what the experience that person lived to have that experience. But I'm so happy that those lines are being blurred a little bit now, because I really think that there's so much benefit that people can have. And when people take a hard stance against something that they don't maybe not even really know that much about, they're just creating a void in themselves, a lack of an opportunity to learn. So
I couldn't agree more. And I think you and I probably have a way of thinking. I think we look really positively at that situation, because on the other flip side, things are really divided right now. And so I know for me, and I'm sure for you too, it's a difficult thing to grasp when we are the type of people that, certainly I'm very strong in my belief system, you're very strong in what you believe, but I'm very accepting of other people's beliefs. I've traveled with the Global Peace Foundation for many years. Robert and I traveled with them for 14 years, and I worked closely with people of other faiths, really strong Hindus and Muslims, and worked with a lot of Jewish people. And it's just beautiful because we have so much in common, and you can learn so much from people that look different than you, that have different beliefs. And for us to say, oh no, it's my way or the highway, it's just wrong. So that troubles me. It hurts me, if you will, in my spirit, to see people being divided.
Yeah, it's limiting.
Yeah, very.
Why do you think faith is so difficult for people?
Well, because they're fearful. They're fearful. I think sometimes it starts as a youth. Maybe, like you said, there was a stigma, and it wasn't necessarily positive to be a spiritual person. It was more about religion. And religions divide people. You're not this, you need to be this way, you better believe this, or, and spirituality is not. I mean, for me, I practice my spirituality in a certain way. So that's religious. But, spirituality is so important. And again, you can have wounds from childhood. You can have wounds where a person that represented God to you hurt you badly. I mean, certainly that's probably the number one thing that we see in a church situation is people have been so hurt by different religions, not just Christianity, you name it. And so they're negative and they're turned off and they don't want to hear anything about it. And once these people start opening their hearts and their minds and realizing it isn't about religion, it's about the love of God, and it's about God loving everybody. And then it's up to you how far you want to go. Because I always tell people, if you feel far away from God, guess who moved?
Ooh.
Yeah. Guess who moved,
Yeah.
right?
That's so true.
Yeah. It is because it is because it is. And if you don't feel connected, in fact, that's a good question to ask people because, and you've known me for so long, I've never tried to convert people or proselytize. I just share who I am. I try to be really encouraging to people, but it's really important to know that you have to have an effort towards something, anything, any relationship.
Mm-hmm.
You have to put out the effort. You have to be deliberate. You can't just sit around waiting for it to happen.
Mm-hmm.
Life doesn't work like that. I mean, sometimes some things happen like that to us, right? But you have to put in the effort to learn. And even with the spirituality.
Luck favors the active.
Yes.
You know, if you're just sitting around waiting to be lucky.
Right. Right.
You got to get out there and make things happen.
Exactly. It's like another silly quote from a person named Ethel Waters is, God doesn't steer a parked car. You know, you can't just sit there in your car going, okay, I'm going to go here and I'm going to go there, but yet you don't turn on the ignition, you don't drive away, right? I mean, you can use that analogy for boats and anything, really.
Well, it's funny because I thought of an analogy recently that really helped. So one of the reasons why I think people lose fear is because they've hoped for something in the past that didn't come true. So now they think,
disappointment.
That I shouldn't have faith in anything anymore because it's not really going to, I don't want to set my hopes up for something.
Oh, yes, that's a biggie.
And in my reading and in my studies, what I've learned is that you can pick the destination, but not the route. Right? So you can decide, this is what I want to achieve. This is what I want in life because God wants for you what you want for yourself.
Right.
But you can't pick the route.
No, you
cannot. Because we might think of there's one route for it, but there's really, God's got a million routes for it, right? And so if you were to now, since the advent of GPS, every time I get in my car, I GPS where I'm going. I know how to get there. When I came here today, I know I've been here a million times. I know exactly how to get there, but I GPSed it because they're always going to give you, I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about that way. That's actually much quicker.
I know.
And so I've been actually thinking about that now in terms of my relationship with God and how I want to set my goals for things. But if it takes a turn that wasn't what I was expecting, I don't give up hope.
Right. People get derailed that way.
Yeah. So let's definitely delve into your new book because I'm very excited to talk about that.
Thank you.
I really loved your book.
Thank you.
I thought
it's an easy read.
It's a very easy read. What was your inspiration for writing this book?
My inspiration really was somebody wanted me to write it. One day I have a women's group called Fearless Women, as you know. One of these days you're coming because you're invited. And as I found this crumpled piece of paper and I had written down a bunch of fearless women are, outspoken. Fearless women aren't afraid to stand up for freedom. Fearless women embrace health. So I had all this litany of things I'd written down and I was like, oh, this is interesting. Maybe I'll read it to the women at the beginning of this meeting. So I read all this stuff. And one gal was like, oh my gosh, she came up to me and she said, you need to write a book. I go, oh no, thank you. I've written books. I've written a few. It's a lot of work. I don't have the time. I don't have any but thank you. That's great. Cute. Thanks. Thanks for the recommendation. No, you have to. And I'm like, oh, okay, thank you. And I think she even said something like, God told me. And I was like, oh no can do.
I'm talking to him too. If he tells me, then I'll let you know.
Exactly right. So I left though, and I could not shake that. I was like, oh, darn it. Really? I have to do this. So, so that's what happened. And
I heard you got teamed up on.
I did. Yes. It was Amber, a girl named Amber. She teamed up on me and she said, let me take that list. I'll put it on a Word doc for you. I was like, oh, okay, really? Thanks. All right. And so that's what happened. It's when you feel like you have to do something because you just have to do it because you can't shake that. You can't shake that feeling. There's a part, there's part of the Bible, they talk about how God wrestles with people, and he wrestles all night. Gosh, I think it's with Jacob. And he wakes up exhausted, but it's like, oh, okay, that's how I felt. I felt like I was wrestling with God. Like, do this. No, I don't want to do this. I'm too lazy. I'm too busy. Whatever it is, right? And we can make excuses all day long, but at the end of the day, when you know you have to do something, you have to do it. Yeah. That's where I am. And then I'm an A student, so I got to go for it and I got to get it done. And I get really frustrated because of all the technology, because the writing part is easy. the filing and the this and the that and putting it in the format and trying to find somebody to hire to do it. And I thought I was going to lose my mind the last 6 months. I'm like, I'm done. I would tell Robert, I'm done. I'm not doing this book. But it's already written. I go, I know, but I don't like this part. I'm not doing it. I'm done. I'm just going to put it away, put my papers away, and maybe it'll happen, but waiting for somebody to rescue me. And they didn't. So I did it.
So there's something going around Facebook right now. It's a quote by Carolyn Meese, and she says, they said, how do you know the difference between fantasy, if something's just coming out of your mind, and something that's directed and intuition? How do you know the difference? And she says, because the one that's coming through your intuition feels uncomfortable.
Yes, that's so true. That's true. And, it's interesting because I say a similar thing. In fact, I've spoken on this to the women's group, and that is, how do you know if it's really a God-inspired vision, right? I'm speaking from my faith here, God-inspired vision, or if it's just coming from your ego? Is it just something you want to do because you want it on your resume, or you want it, you just want to feel better about yourself? So how do you know? And this is how I test it. You test it by the fruit it bears. Any project. How do you know if it's just, oh, I want to have this, podcast because I'm Delphine and I want people to know who I am? Or is it because you want to make the world a better place? This is just me talking to you now. And obviously you had incredible fruits from this three and a half years. What's it, 3 years?
Wow.
About right. I'm doing Delphine's Circle. And so that's how I test things in my life. What are the fruits? And sometimes it could be a great project and you still have the door closed on you, and that's okay. You have to be able to wait.
Helping other people?
Is it helping?
Too?
Yes.
Is it helping other
people? Well, exactly. The fruits would show that, you're helping people, you're making the world a better place by helping people.
Yeah.
And otherwise, if you have negative coming at you all the time from something that you're starting to do, and I don't mean negative as in, oh gosh, the lights broke, or my sound isn't working today, things like that. Those are challenges we all have. I mean, like if you started really seeing negative things happen because of something that you thought was a great idea, then it's probably not a great idea. Yeah. But it takes time. It takes time to really discern what's worthwhile and what's not. What's of my ego? Like, did I want to write this book because I needed my name on another book? Definitely not. Definitely not. I don't even have a big enough platform anymore. I used to really properly promote it, which is fine, but it's not about that for me. It was about getting the message out, and hopefully people will read it, young people will read it, and maybe it'll make a difference in their life where I wish I would have had this kind of knowledge when I was younger. I may not have made some of the
fact that these thoughts about fearlessness were coming at a time when the world is more fearful than ever before. So the message is resonating with what people need to hear right now. And somebody told you by storming the stage and saying, Donna, write a book. We need to hear more of this
Exactly.
message. Yeah.
And I came up with that word, though, for Fearless Women Group the fall before. I was just going to call it Gathering Women. Gathering women. We're just gathering women. And I was like, no, I need an action word in there. What are we? Oh, gathering fearless women. And that was in the fall of 2019. And then the world fell apart for a while, right? So we have to listen to those messages, and then they come together, right? We were talking about that earlier. And, these pieces, again, you have to be open to it. Yeah. And you see how, oh my gosh, okay, I got that vision for fearless women in the fall, not knowing what was going to happen in March of 2020, but somebody knew.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't believe in coincidence. So
no, there is no such thing.
Right?
Well, I totally agree, honey. And that's what I do. It's like, if I think of something, I set with it. Mm-hmm. And if I start finding support in other areas, all of a sudden somebody will mention something to you, and you'll pick up a magazine and something will be written about that. You start getting hints and messages along the way that letting you know that you're on the right path, right? Road signs is what I call them.
Exactly. I like those road signs.
Yeah. What I loved about this book is when I was reading it, it really kind of, it's written in such a simple way that it almost allowed me to go, okay, where am I on this? Am I meeting this goal for myself? Do I feel like I'm here? Ooh, this one, maybe not as much. Maybe I need to rethink about where my values lie around this, and if this is something that's, so I almost kind of took it as like a checklist for myself to kind of see where do I fall in on all of these different aspects, and do I feel like I'm being the most fearless woman I can be in these different aspects?
That's
is
why
that what you kind of intended?
That's why I put in that ponder section. There's a place where you pray, right? And then you ponder. And so I have a couple of simple questions in there to get you thinking. I do that in my group too. I typically break halfway through whatever I talk about. We go into small groups, and then there's like a question or two where the women ponder and talk together. And it's hard to get them to,
Get back.
reconvene. I know, very hard. Usually like 10 minutes at the end before everybody has to go do whatever they're doing at 11 a.m. And it's like, okay, I have a little bell. Timed it. Okay. Are you finished yet over here?
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, and I love the tone of the book because it really feels like it's written like, it feels like kind of like the voice of a big sister.
Oh, good.
It doesn't, it doesn't feel like you're certainly not talking down to anybody.
Good.
And it almost feels like it's like camp counselor, big sister, like you're rooting for us all the way through.
Good. Thank
really
you.
felt like that.
Thank you for that. And it says fearless women, but I've had men read it, and there's examples that cross over into men. Although there's I write a lot about women's relationships because it seems like us, women have a lot more going on as far as like some petty behavior sometimes, and people doing things behind others' backs. And, I'm old enough now where I feel like I've kind of sifted through all the people that kind of act like that. They don't really come into my circle. Yeah. And, but once in a while we still come across people, and it's like being able to discern that. And, men aren't, I don't think generally, the men in my life are more like, just shake it off and whatever. Who said what? Okay, so what, right? We seem to, I think the women I know seem to take things more to heart. Yeah. But yet
maybe a little more sensitive.
Yeah, a little more sensitive. But I don't know if we're more sensitive or we just, I don't know, because I think men are terrible, very, very sensitive, but they just don't know how to show it.
That's true.
And yeah.
So I also loved how easy it was to buy.
Yeah, thank you. I like how easy it is to keep traveling. Yeah,
right?
Amazon.
Very affordable. I think it was right around the $20 mark. Yeah. So it's easy to get, it's easy to buy. Are you open to doing speaking events or?
Oh, I love that. Yes, that's my favorite thing to do is to speak. And I don't think I'm a great writer. I don't think I'm a bad writer, but I write like I speak. So I try to just be very sensible. I have ideas and from reading and researching, and then I just try to put that in a faith language and share that with people. And again, I never, I've seen so many people that are, I hate to say this, but it's like they're teaching, but they put people down unintentionally. Right. That happened to me in my early walk as a pastor's wife. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'd leave some of these seminars going, I'm not doing that right. I'm not doing this right. I don't read my Bible enough. I don't pray enough. Oh my gosh, I don't journal. What's wrong with me? And that was the last thing I needed as a young woman raising a family. So I try never to be that person. I try to be accepting and loving. And
everybody's doing the best they can in that moment.
Yes. And I try to say things that are thought-provoking, but then I give people the responsibility. I don't have any homework in my group. That's one thing people love. Each week stands on its own. There's no like, oh, you missed 2 months, because I have a group of women that travel all the time. And same with church. My husband doesn't, he tries not to speak down to people. He's just educating people. And he ties in a lot of current events from a biblical perspective so that he's educating people. And I think he does a great job. And it's so freeing because we have this small little group now. And we came out of this mega church with lots of big boards and, board of directors and people telling us, suggesting what to do. And now it's...
Well, let's talk a little bit about that because that was a big part of your life. And, Reverend Robert Schuller, Crystal Cathedral, Hour of Power comes from a very, I think they coined the term televangelism after the Schuller family.
My father-in-law did.
Yeah. So big family to join and to now walk side by side with your husband in the ministry. give me a little
Sure.
story about the days of Hour of Power when you first got into this group.
Sure. A little Laguna Beach gal here, had been a flight attendant and a model and very independent. And I met my husband on the beach. I was going through a divorce. He was going through a divorce. He had a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. And when I met him within the first few seconds, I was like, oh no. I thought I had problems. This is no. He's a pastor with a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old. No can do. Well, again, no can do. It's like, oh yeah, you're going to go out to dinner with him. He asked me out to dinner. And I was like, okay, all right, sure. I mean,
this is just
I'll
dinner.
go. Yeah, it was 40 years ago. We were married 39 years. So that was 40 years ago. And I found out who he was. My roommate, in fact, at the time said, you know who that is? I'm like, no idea. What do you mean? She goes, oh yeah. She's the one we used to go like this with our TV. Click, 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 click. We had like a little TV, in our apartment here in Laguna. And she goes, yeah, he reads scripture for his dad. His dad's a huge pastor. He's famous. I'm like, no idea who he is. No idea. But I found out really quickly, and that was in the 1980s. So, early 80s. So we married in 84. I met him in 83. And in fact, his dad was just a delightful, loving, funny guy. So witty, so smart. I can tell you, his dad once tripped, and he had a cup of coffee in his hand. He tripped and fell. And he quickly jumped up and he goes, I was just checking out the new carpet. Like, that's the kind of funny little quippy, real quick-minded stuff he'd say. But I also had to introduce myself to his dad, because Robert and I had just started dating, and his dad had a study apartment. That's how we met, because Robert was living in this study apartment while he was going through his divorce. And I was with my roommate, the one with the little TV, right? And we were both flight attendants. And so he said, he was trying to sell one of his cars, Robert was. And he said, I'm at work. Do you mind going and getting the keys out of my dad's apartment? I go, okay, sure, fine. I've never been intimidated by anybody. Yeah. Even though at that point, my father-in-law was like bigger than life. Right. I think he was like the most famous name in Orange County at that point. So, and he had a best-selling book, Tough Times Never Last, Tough People Do, which was on the bestsellers list forever.
I mean, he was a proponent of the power of positive thinking.
Yes, he was. Very much so. Yes, a student of Norman Vincent Peale, right? Who wrote that book, The Power of Positive Thinking. So I go knock, knock, knock on this door, and I'll never forget, he opens the door, he's like, hello, Donna, you must be nice to meet you. Come on in. I was like, okay, thanks. And I've always gotten along really well with men. I know part of it is because my dad was such a great man and I lost him. He was killed in a car accident when I was 13. But I always had a great relationship. So I've never been intimidated by men. You're not either. Yeah, no, it's such a wonderful way to be.
Yeah, some of my best friends are men.
Yes.
I've got a lot of male friends.
I feel really comfortable around men. Yeah. So anyway, I felt comfortable with Robert's dad. He gave me the keys. I left and I was like, I introduced myself to Robert Schuller, who at that time, like we were talking, young people don't know. Anybody under like probably 45 years old has no idea who this is. Unless you grew up in the church as a little kid and your parents went. But anybody over age 45 up to, if you're still living.
Hour of Power is the longest running television show in history, next to 60 Minutes.
Exactly.
And it's still going.
It is.
Bobby is now.
Our son, my stepson, that little 2-year-old that I met. Oh. Yeah, he's now, what is he? 41. Yeah, so he's still he does a great job, he and his wife. And meanwhile, we're just have our little thing at the Newport Beach Civic Center on Sunday mornings, and we love what we do. We really do. We love it.
You're so good at it.
Oh, thank you.
You're really good at it.
Thank you. Thank you
so much. But I do want to touch on something because I know that it's always easy to see people on TV or see you on your broadcast, and it always looks so beautiful and perfect. And you and Robert are just so gorgeous. And
you're sweet. Thank you.
You guys are the Barbie and Ken of.
There's a movie out by that. No,
right?
I haven't seen it. No,
but
thank you.
I know you went through some health issues, and it was really not easy for you. I'd love for you to just share a little bit about that.
June of 2020. So I started my group in March of 2020. Robert and I also started a drive-in church March 2020 because the churches in Orange County shut down. So we did an outdoor thing. And so just to tell you where I was.
You guys were ahead of the game on that.
It was making something old new again, because his dad had started in a drive-in, in a literal drive-in, which we don't have anymore here in Southern California, right? But I started having some knee pains in June of 2020. I was like, that's weird. I've never had knee pains. I do like bar fitness, right? We do a lot down and up because I know you enjoy the same kind of classes. And I remember thinking, what's wrong with my knees? I don't have knee problems. And I still went to the gym. It got worse and worse. I'm like, knee problems? Then it went to my hips. It went to my pelvis. Yeah, all over. So what happened is in the course of about 6 months, shorter than that, in the course of 3 months, I became so ill that I couldn't walk. I could barely walk. I couldn't take my dog for a walk around the corner. I just laid on the couch. I went to all the doctors and asked about what it was. I had all these tests. They diagnosed me with mold, that I've been exposed to mold, so biotoxin illness. But I cleared all that up, and it was still something else. So then they found out, oh, you have a lot of lead in your body and mercury, So I do a lot of alternative things, unfortunately. And unfortunately, because it's expensive, the insurance doesn't pay for it. But I did it, I'm just like, whatever it takes, I can't be like this. This is not right. And I've always been tip-top health. I mean, I don't have any
you never even take an Advil.
No, I don't take anything.
Take anything.
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't. I don't take antibiotics. I don't even take an Advil or a Tylenol, and none of that stuff. Very healthy. Go to the gym 4 or 5 times a week, go to classes, play tennis. Eat super clean. So
it's not supposed to happen to you.
No. And I got so bad that I would, in the middle of the night, because I couldn't sleep, I felt like it was like broken glass on my bed. Like it was that bad. It was like everything hurt just a touch. And I remember thinking, okay, I might die. And that's okay. I actually made peace with dying. And I went through the whole list like, okay, my husband's going to be okay. He'll be okay. It's going to be really tough on my kids. But then I got to my grandkids and I was like, how is my daughter Christina going to explain to my grandkids that they call me D, that D died? Like, I was like, this is not, I can't do this to him. And that's how bad the pain was though. And here's what it did. My journey of healing went from severe pain within a few months, and then it finally started getting better. I believe, like I did IV chelation, EDTA chelation, which they put, in your vein and you sit there for an hour. And I did, probably 30 sessions of that. And of course, my prayer life has never been more fervent. I was,
about
the new level faith, right? But here's what it did for me. And I got completely healed, by the way. By 2021, it's like nothing ever happened. Nothing ever happened. 10 months later, no problem with my knees, no problem with my hips, no problem with, it got to a point where my chiropractor that I had been going to for 30 years said, don't know about your knees, there's always stem cell. You can have stem cell. And I was like, okay, oh my gosh, this is the most positive man. And I'm like, oh man, this is bad. My knees are fine. I went snow skiing this past season. I can wakeboard. I still go to bar fitness classes. I go to the gym. I can do anything I play tennis. I'm back. But here's what it did, Delphine. It gave me so much compassion for people that have chronic pain, because I have to say I was a little judgmental in that department. I was like, you don't eat right. You don't exercise. You need to go to the gym. You need to give up those crappy chips, whatever it was. I was very judgmental. I didn't recognize it. I thought I was just being a good nutritionist. But when I experienced that pain, it gave me a deep understanding of first of all, how many people walk around in chronic pain and how it affects your psyche. It affects everything about you. Forget the energy level. Forget the fact that you have to sleep hours and hours to survive. But it's changed me.
It's humbling.
It's very humbling, very humbling. And I thank God that, I got through it. It's a whole conversation for another day, but I actually think now that I had what they're saying is long COVID. I think that's what it is. I never had the bronchial stuff, but my son-in-law came back from China December of 2019. And so January 1st, 2020, we spent New Year's with them up in Northern California. Robert got so ill. 3 weeks after that, I was like, I can't be this ill. It's almost my birthday. I can't be ill. And I took such good care of myself. But then it took 6 months. And here's why I think that. My my stepdaughter, my oldest daughter, whose husband had come back from China and got sick on the plane on the way back. She got sick and had the same symptoms, very similar at the same time. We'd go, oh my gosh, did you have a month of headaches? Yes, I had a month of headaches. And she walked around with knee braces. This is how bad hers got. Had a very similar experience. And
so it was a strain that...
It was. Yeah. And we weren't living together. She's in Northern California. I'm down here in Newport Beach. So looking back, the biotoxin illness and all this diagnosis, I think it tied in to something that had to do with COVID. It happened in June of 2020, and I was fine by 2021. 10 months later. It took me, my journey was 10 months. Seemed like forever, but I didn't think I was going to make it out. And here I am.
And here you are.
Better than ever.
Yeah. Well, I definitely want to touch on your family because you do have a big, beautiful, amazing family.
Thank you.
Your Christmas card, I think it was 2 years ago now, is one of my all-time favorite Christmas cards. It was you and Robert and all the grandkids.
On our couch.
Oh, it was so adorable. Catch us up. What's going on with the family?
Sure. We have 9 grandchildren. The newest is 4 months old. So I'll start with that. So my youngest son, Anthony, who graduated from Laguna Beach High School, is now, he's been a chiropractor for a few years, but he moved to Utah so he could have a better opportunity to build a successful practice and raise his kids there. And so he's got a 4-month-old baby girl and a 3-year-old baby girl. And they moved. So that was sad because he was my doctor as well. So it's like, I'm losing my son and my doctor. Then my daughter, Christina, has 3 children, a now 3-year-old, 6-year-old, and 9-year-old. They moved to Florida last December. So going on a year ago, December 2022. And she was like my best friend. I saw her all the time. I'm not like my best friend. She was. So I miss her so badly. She's 37 and she's loving Key Biscayne, Florida. She's right across the bridge from Miami. Her husband's business is there. And the kids are thriving. They ride their bikes to school like I used to when I was little. They don't drive anywhere. They have a golf cart and bicycles.
That's great.
She rides her bike to her tennis club. I mean, it's just a great life. And then my daughter, Angie, my stepdaughter, sorry, I'm getting out of line here. I'm Bobby. We talked about Bobby. He's a pastor here in Irvine, does the Hour Power as well. And he has a 11-year-old and a 13-year-old. And the 11-year-old is severely special needs and has been. So that is a situation for that family that's, is a heavy, heavy burden and something that just doesn't go away. Beautiful children anyway. And then my stepdaughter, Angie, who was 5 when I met Robert, she just moved to Redlands from Northern California to Redlands. And she has, she's the oldest, but she's got some of the youngest kids. So she's got a little boy 6 and a little girl 7. And we see them more often now because they moved to Redlands about 3 or 4 months ago. And his business is out in the desert, but he has clients in LA, so that's why they chose Redlands. Okay. I wanted him to go to the desert.
Yeah.
I was like, go to the desert. Right? We need a family home out there. And they didn't.
Well, you got my place.
I know. I got to come see you.
Absolutely. I can't wait.
I'm going to.
Yay.
You can count on it.
Donna, it's been so amazing getting together with you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for having
coming
here and
thank you for talking about my book. I appreciate it.
I love this book, and everybody who picks it up is going to love it.
Thank you.
I predict great success. I have faith.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Delphine Circle. Don't forget to subscribe. It's free and it will help us keep these incredible interviews coming your way. Here are 2 other episodes you may enjoy. I'm Delphine. Welcome to my circle.